He lowered his rifle and walked toward the man he had been ordered to kill. Silence hit like a wall. Boots stopped. A single breath hung in the air. The commander's face went stone. Around them there is mud, barbed wire, and the metallic taste of fear. This is Anton Richter. He's 31 from Graz. Before the war he was a machinist with precise hands. He loved coffee at dawn and the click of gears. He had a narrow face, eyes that always seemed to look inward. He carried a small photograph of 2 children and a woman smiling, tucked into his uniform. By autumn 1943, the Eastern Front was a bruise, across maps and across souls. Anton had been a conscript for 2 years. He had seen how orders could turn ordinary men into machines of destruction. He read the daily casualty figures, rows of deaths, lists of the missing. He learned to obey. It was how you survived. It was how you kept your mother's bread. Then, in late November, near a village called Malinovka, a place that smelled of pine and smoke, his unit got an order: round up the men of a nearby farmhouses, suspected of hiding partisans. That farmhouse had been a problem. In the commander's reports, it was a known hideout, a nest of whispered traitors. Anton watched as the list of names was called out: 6 men. The commander's words were cold and simple: execute them at dawn. No witnesses. Obedience was a machine, and Anton had been feeding it excuses for months. But that night he couldn't sleep. Rain tapped softly on the tin roof. He held his photograph and thought, if they can do this, what will be left of my hands? What will keep me human? There was a letter tucked in another soldier's wallet. A letter from a man begging forgiveness for being a son. Anton read it in secret. He thought of the farmhouse. Were there children there? He imagined them. And the world tilted. A confession: he had never killed in cold blood. He had seen killing in battle blurred by fear, by survival, but this was different. Dawn came like a silver blade. The squad moved under a sky the color of old metal. The farmhouse sat in a hollow smoke rising from its chimney. A dog tied to a post, and someone sweeping a porch. Anton's hands were steady in training. He checked his rifle. He kept his face blank. As the men were dragged out one by one, rough, blinking, still in shirts that smelt of sweat and bread. Their eyes weren't the eyes of monsters. They were tired, shocked, alive. One of them hummed a tune under his breath, a broken lullaby. Orders barked. The commander's face went hard as stone. The squad formed a line. Anton stepped into his spot, 3 steps left of the commander. He aimed, not at the head, at the chest, clean, quick, efficient. The man in front of him looked like his uncle. That year, Anton learned to sharpen tools, stubborn, sun-brown, disbelieving. The man tried to speak. Anton heard fragments. I have no partisans, please. And in Anton's throat a splinter of a question came out. Who gave this man his face? Then he lowered the rifle. Everything inside, Anton recoiled at that small act. The soldier beside him gasped. The sergeant shouted, his face become red, furious. What are you doing? He said. The commander's eyes stabbed into him like a bayonet. Why had he done it? Is it mercy, fear? A memory of his sister pressing her forehead to his. Maybe all of it tangled together. He felt the weight of every small mercy crush into one huge mistake. Some men raised their rifles. Some looked away. The condemned man froze, more confused than relieved. Stand down, secure him, the commander barked. His voice flat, like correcting a broken machine. Anton's hands trembled. He should have obeyed. He should have pulled the trigger. That's what training demanded. But he didn't. He had opened a gap in obedience and stepped through it. The commander stepped toward him cold as a tribunal. What would he do? The court-martial came fast. The army is quick when it needs to show control. Anton was accused of disobedience, of breaking discipline when the front demanded steel. The commander called him a traitor. Some men in the squad avoided his gaze. Others quietly placed a hand on his arm. when the guards weren't looking. Waiting for punishment, Anton sat in a small cell with a slice of sky for a window. He wrote with a pencil stub on a piece of uniform cloth. He wrote to the woman in the photograph and folded the letter into his pocket where it would be found, whether he lived or died. He wrote what he would never said aloud, that he lowered his rifle because the condemned man's eyes looked like any father's, because just once he wanted to answer to something higher than orders. The trial was for show, witnesses, statements. The sharp tap of a gavel everyone pretended not to hear. The sentence could have been death. Usually, it was. Instead, they chose another kind of punishment. Stripped rank hard labor on the rail lines. He transferred to a punishment battalion. Mercy by calculation. Keep him alive but broken. A warning to others. Anton left under guard. The condemned man Mihail, he later learned, and survived. Word reached him in fragments. Mihail and his family escaped to a safe house, then were freed by partisans, then killed in crossfire months later. The news came like a stone skipping over dark water, each ripple, a mix of relief and grief. Anton's life became one of hardship, colder food, heavier shifts, constant eyes on him. He learned the language of endurance. He worked on rails in the rain, laying iron that carried tanks and death deeper into frozen fields. At night, he woke screaming for that one morning. When he chose to lower his rifle, guilt settled like dust. Soldiers whispered his story as a warning. Kids in barracks turned it into a dare, but in quiet moments another version survived. He kept Mihail's face in his mind like a map. He never saw him again. That absence became a wound. There's a mercy that forces you to carry a ghost. Years later, as the war's iron grip loosened, a faint letter arrived. Who sent it? Friend, enemy, or the past? And how will Anton answer? After the war, Anton returned to a city with its ribs broken by bombs. A city that had learned to bend and fix itself. He never went back to the army. He worked again as a machinist. He married a woman who had survived an orphanage. A woman who laughed like she was arguing with sorrow. He had children. He taught them to fix bicycles and to listen before they spoke. He rarely spoke about the trial. When he did, his voice was soft but steady. It was the only time I couldn't keep my hand steady for killing. It's easy to say the man who refused was right. But it's never that simple. Anton's act cost him his safety, his rank, his belonging. But it saved something too. One life, maybe even a piece of himself. He traded belonging to an army for belonging to his conscience. Years later, in a small 1960s newspaper interview, Anton said, "When you lower your rifle, you don't just refuse a bullet. You accept the world will punish you for it. You go hungry for a long time, but that hunger is honest." He traces the scene where he once wrote that letter. He remembers that single breath before stepping forward, the weight of an order, the taste of fear, the decision to disobey for the sake of mercy.